it's 2023. It's been a while. It's been a long time actually since I've done a live stream. In fact, it's been a long time since I've done pretty much anything on YouTube for a while. There's been a few reasons for that, some of which I've made public, some of which I haven't made public, but it's the start of a new year. I start a new job tomorrow, which is all very exciting and so forth. So I thought I'd do a live stream just to sort of re-immerse myself a little bit in YouTube, because this is going to yet again form another part of a significant part of the year ahead. So I have with me a beverage of choice. This is vanilla Coke Zero Sugar. I have some water, and of course I have those of you who happen to who this live stream happens to coincide with a little bit of your free time. So welcome to be here. Welcome. It's great to have you here. One of the first things that I'll show you is a bit of mail that I got a little bit recently. This is from YouTube. It's not actually from YouTube. It's from whoever they outsource their creator reward program stuff to. But this is my YouTube play button, or they call them plaque awards. It's plaque. It's no longer a play button unless you get to a certain point. But this arrived in the mail and is frankly something I never thought I would receive. It came with obviously the plaque itself, and it came with a letter from YouTube, which I shall read to you. Some 100,000 subscribers. Just how far have you come? If each of your subscribers were a light year, they could take you from one side of the Milky Way to the other. What a strange thing to say. If each of my subscribers was a light year, they could take you from one side of the Milky Way to another. To try and put a number into perspective, using something that is not very easy to imagine, like a light year, and putting 100,000 of them together to compare it to something else that's hard to imagine in perspective, like the entire galaxy, and using that to somehow put the number into perspective is a really strange metric. Why not just say that's a stadium full of people or something like that? I'm not sure. It's a really strange metric. Anyway, if each of your subscribers were a light year, they could take you from one side of the Milky Way to the other. That's far. Yeah, you don't say. And it's why today we're so excited to celebrate your special YouTube journey with you. Not only have you brought a unique voice and style to the world, you've also created valuable connections and built a community along the way. I'm sure everyone gets this exact same letter telling them how unique their voice and style happens to be. In that spirit, YouTube is proud to present you with the Silver Creator Award, which celebrates your hard work and incredible achievement. Congratulations on this amazing milestone, just one of the many we hope will follow in the future. After all, there are countless others out there who have yet to discover your passion and dedication. Whether they come to your channel to learn something new or just for a laugh, a whole new audience is waiting for you to inspire them, just as your growing community continues to inspire you. We can't wait to see what you do next, and we'll be with you every step of the way. Yours sincerely, Susan Surname, who's the CEO at YouTube. So that's really cool. What is, to put all of this into perspective, according to Social Blade, there are 350,000 channels on YouTube bigger than mine, which means there are over 350,000 people that already have a YouTube play button. Now that 100,000 subscribers, a huge number. I grew up in a town that had about 12,000 people. I grew up in a small village that had about 1,000 people. So those numbers of people, again, just massive. But to think that there are 350,000 other people, which is the size of the city that I now live in, that's mind-boggling material. Anyway, we have the play button itself, or the plaque as it now is, which has a very glossy silver mirror and is this aluminium type thing. it's pretty cool. It's quite hard to read. The inscription engraving on this is white on silver, which doesn't really comply with any sort of accessibility guidelines, but it's pretty cool nonetheless. Now, I never expected to get anywhere like this. I remember passing 500 subscribers. I remember getting to about 10,000 and then 50,000 a hang of a lot longer later, but I never thought I'd get to 100,000. So this is pretty epic, but I never planned for it in my wall of many things. So I'm going to have to find somewhere for this to go. I suggested to my wife that we put it in our bedroom above our bed, but she wasn't particularly keen on that idea. So I'm going to have to find a place for it. But that's probably a problem that's going to wait a little bit later. I don't know. Should I actually have it in my wall of many things, or should I leave this space that I have just for instruments and interesting things? Not sure. That's something that I shall deliberate on. It's something I'll think about. Speaking of my wall of many things, I have over the past few months received a number of interesting things. So one or two of them may actually make it onto my wall of many things. Now, I don't want to talk about too much because that's a lot of video content that I don't want to spoil, but it's something. One thing that I will show you is this, which is the definition of an impulse buy, because this is a 1920s Swanny, I don't know what it said, patented slide saxophone. It takes a soprano saxophone mouthpiece, which I don't own one of, but they did helpfully send me this little cap that goes on the top. But it takes a soprano saxophone mouthpiece, and you slide this up and down, making all sorts of metal on metal creaking noises to adjust the pitch. And it has this sort of lip that extends vertically. I don't know if this is all complete and this is all playable or whatever. As I say, I don't have a soprano saxophone mouthpiece, so I can't try it out. But it meets my definition of being unusual, rare, and a bit stupid, so I just knew I had to have it. I don't know what the base metal is. I suspect it's something cheap. I suspect it might even be tin that has been chrome plated. It feels very cheap. But these were made in the UK, I think. They're called the Swanny sax, Swanee. Yeah. There's a few things that, I mean, apart from the awful metal on metal sort of scraping sounds that you get, it is a saxophone, so I'm never going to be good at playing it. But there is a scale along here that has the positions and where the notes are, as you can see. But of course, unless you're playing into a mirror, you're never actually going to see them because they're on the opposite side to where your eyeballs happen to be. Because most people's eyeballs are in the general proximity of their mouth. The mouth position of your mouth is predetermined by the position of the mouthpiece holder. And of course, the controls for this contraption are on the other side, as is the legend of the note. So sucking away at it like this, trying to go up and down, it's kind of a bit pointless. It's quite similar to the slide trumpet that I did a video on last year, which also has some engravings to indicate where the slide needs to go that are largely invisible from when you're in a playing position. But this is something that I got that might feature in a future video, but it's probably going to end up on my wall of many things because I don't expect it to function as a musical instrument, not particularly well anyway, but it is interesting, unusual, and a bit stupid. So it meets all of my criteria. WD-40 is an idea of something that I should put on it. I'll have to see. I'll have to see whether that works or not. Right. What if you put them right at the bottom of the frame under the bottom left hand side under the flugelhorn? So bottom left, left. Your left or my left? I mean, there is geography on my wall of many things. There's the webcam that I use to do my live stream tends to show a little bit more of a wider field of view than the camera that I use to record my videos. So you're probably seeing more now than what you would normally. So I could put it down in the corner here, but you probably wouldn't see it in the video, which may or may not be a good thing. I don't know. I feel it's a little bit ostentatious to have your displays and awards and all that sort of stuff in every video, but then again, having a huge display of musical instruments is not exactly unostentatious. Somebody has asked me, Rod Rodriguez asks, "Hi Trent, I am truly inspired by your presentation. Thank you very much. By the way, do you have a flumpet?" I have a frumpet, which is... where is my frumpet? It's over on... it's out of shot. This is my frumpet, which was made by Getson. This was sent to me a long time ago when my channel was much, much smaller than it is now. And this was made by Getson's, the 300 series frumpet. But a flumpet, I don't have a flumpet. I wonder... just judging by the name, whether it's a combination of a flugelhorn / trumpet, whereas the frumpet is a French horn trumpet hybrid. I presume that that's a flugelhorn trumpet hybrid thing. No, I don't have one. If you're offering to send me one, please do. That would be cool. Would I be interested in making a VST library from my collection? Not that I know how, but I think there would be a market for it. I don't think there would be a market for it. Most of the instruments that end up on my wall of many things are instruments that aren't high in musical value. So if you're making a VST, which for those who don't know, the sort of Reader's Digest condensed version of what a VST is that it's a library of sounds that you can use. If you're a composer, you make digital music, you can put the source for that through a VST and it'll sound like something else. So computers generate their own sounds. VST is a library of pre-recorded sound samples that can make much more realistic sounding digital music without having to have musicians. To make a good VST, you want something that is high in sound production quality, but is tuneful and all the rest of it. Most of these instruments don't come under that quality. In fact, a lot of these instruments aren't particularly playable. Like there is my, whereabouts is it? Up here is my super piccolo trumpet that I made. That's 2 octaves above a normal trumpet. That is not playable in any way, shape or form. You've got the cavalry trombone here, and again, the tuning of that instrument is of dubious worth and so forth. So making a VST is beyond my skill set, but I don't think there would be a market for it. I wonder if they made a slide shell mic. Oh, the thought of that. Yeah. The tuba guy has asked several times, where can I get a treble tuba? You can get them anywhere that sells them. Wessex sell a mini tuba. Schiller is the brand of mine, I think. Yes, I think mine's a Schiller. But they're made in China, mass produced. You can buy them off Alibaba if you wanted to go and contact a person there, or any of the brands that just take all the stuff that gets made in China, puts their brands on it and resell it. They will likely to have a treble tuba. So you can go and get one from one of them. Apparently the Wessex ones are a little bit better than some of the generic ones. Some of the newer Wessex instruments, they actually design their own as opposed to just using the off-the-shelf ones that the Chinese factories produce, and they may be a bit better. My treble tuba, it's not really a great practicing instrument because of the amount of resistance that goes through it. Brass VSTs are really hard to get right. You're dead right. It's an area of music that I have very little experience and insight into, but I can imagine that doing brass VSTs well is a big problem. One of the other problems, though, is taking the music that you've written and getting whatever instrument is playing that to impart nuance. Often it's written in MIDI. presuppose that a lot of digital music is written using MIDI, and things like MIDI has controls about velocity, volume, and things like that. Trying to encode how long you play a note before you do a vibrato, and how you attack the note and the tone that you use, and so forth. Encoding that on a note-by-note basis would make it very difficult, and then passing all that information to a proper VST to then spit out the result you want. Again, I imagine that's all very difficult. Trent, you may not see this, but I would love to say I love your videos, and I made my middle school all-state jazz band at second chair trumpet. Thank you very much. I appreciate that, and well done on making your middle school all-state jazz band at second chair trumpet. I have no idea what most of those words mean. I don't know what a middle school is. I don't know what an all-state jazz band is. I can imagine though that it's a band that's comprising of people from all over your state, and second chair trumpet. I do know what that means. So congratulations. That sounds really cool. Have I ever played rotary valved flugelhorns and proper euphoniums? Oh, that's a bit triggering with the word proper euphoniums, because that implies that the euphonium that I love playing and have dedicated a large amount of my life to playing is not a proper instrument. So you'll need to define what you mean by proper euphoniums. Have I played rotary valved flugelhorns? I don't know if I have. I'm trying to think. I've got several rotary valve trumpets. I've got a couple of rotary valve cornets. In fact, that one there is a Russian rotary valve cornet. That one there is... everything's reversed. That one there is a E-flat rotary valve trumpet. Have I played a rotary valve flugelhorn? Not sure if I have. Right, by proper you mean not rotary valve baritones or tenor horns. So though there are bohemian style, the sort of curved oval style euphoniums, which come in 3 and 4 valve non-compensating varieties, which I may have played briefly. Don't enjoy them so much, but my main euphonium is a 3+1 upright. So you've got 3 piston valves up the top, piston valve on the side, the +1 bit, and that is my round stamp sovereign. That's my main euphonium that I play. I'm looking into getting a tuning slide trigger added to that, because it would make it a little bit more flexible, but that's just sort of a nebulous idea. In fact, my euphonium's sitting over there in its case. I'll be honest, I haven't played that instrument at all since the end of caroling at Christmas, mid to late December. That was the last time that I've played in nearly a month, and it's not often that I go that long without playing an instrument. I do have a tuba sitting right here. This is a small E-flat tuba, and it is still dressed up for Christmas. This is a very old Besson New Standard tuba. It works reasonably well. I've played everything that I need to play on it, but it does have a smaller size mouthpiece receiver. This isn't my instrument. This belongs to my band, but I played this Christmas caroling a few times, and I just haven't taken the decorations off it. There are a couple of instruments that excite me that I've received over the last little bit, one of which is this. This is another Besson In-harmonic cornet. Now I have one there on my wall of many things, which was the second one that I owned. The first one that I owned came from a guy in the UK who sold it to me, and then a year or so later he reached out to me saying, actually I regret selling that, can I have it back? So I sent that back to him. This one was one that came up on an auction site here in New Zealand, and it cost me, I think, $80 or something, 80 New Zealand pesos, which is not a lot of money for what is quite an unusual instrument. It's in reasonable condition. There's a few dents on the back of the bell crook. I can get all of them out myself. There's a bit of a crumple on the bell here. I might try to get that out myself, but other than that, it's not too bad. There's a bit of soldering that somebody's done on both of the second valve tuning slide knuckles. But this, because of how busy and how little motivation I've had, I've received this, unpackaged it, and then did absolutely nothing for it. The valves leave a little bit to be desired. These might need to be replated or something to them. All of the original plating has worn off. They rattle quite a bit in the valve casing. But I got this because it was very cheap and very. It's a rare instrument. So I got that. That's not the most exciting one that I've got, even though it's left several amounts of residue on my plans. Please don't spam chat. If I get to you, then I get to you. If I don't get to you, then I won't. The other one that I've got, if I just scoot out of frame slightly, is this. This is another euphonium. It's adorned by cobwebs because that is what my music room looks like. This is a Besson In-harmonic euphonium. Now, those of you who know my channel well will know that I got a very, very poor condition Besson In-harmonic euphonium, and it's been sent off to the Brass and Woodwind shop, who is a channel on YouTube. It's also a shop, an instrument repair shop run by Art. He is one of the most talented brass repairers that I have ever seen. The work that he does is just phenomenal, and he's in the process of restoring that instrument and bringing that back to life. It's a huge job. There's no way to overestimate the amount of work that that's going to take. But if you're not subscribed to him, go check out his channels, the Brass and Woodwind shop, and you'll see a few videos where he's going through some of the process of restoring that instrument. Late last year, I saw this on eBay, and I thought to myself, yes, I need to buy that. And so I did buy it, and I've offered to send this to him to make the restoration process a little bit easier for him. He's decided that he'll just press on with what he's doing, which is just a testament to the skill and confidence that that man has in his own abilities, which is entirely justified. He is a craftsman. But this is something that I might try and just get up and running. It doesn't need a lot of work. Most of the tubing is pretty straight. There's some crinkling done to the bell, which I can try and roll out. There's some soldering bodges that I'm just going to leave if it's airtight around here. But this is a very unusual, very rare instrument. Now, what makes these Besson In-harmonic things unusual is the way that the valves are configured. So I've talked about in-harmonic instruments in previous videos quite a lot, so I'm not going to go into huge details. Suffice to say, there are other videos that I've done that talk about this in more detail. But the in-harmonic is an early type of compensating valve design. Boozy, which was Besson's competitor at the time, had patented their form of compensating pistons in, I think, 1870, something like that, 1880, something in the late 1800s. Besson wanted to try and compete, so they tried to make the in-harmonic system, which was vastly more inefficient, because what it does in the 3-valve version is that you have 2 first valve tuning slides and 2 second valve tuning slides, and you have a 3rd valve that changes the pathway through the first and second valve depending on whether you use that 3rd valve or not. So the airflow goes into the 3rd valve first. If you don't use the 3rd valve, you use the shorter first and second tuning slides. If you do use the 3rd valve, then you use the longer first and second tuning slides. And the longer tuning slides add enough extra tubing to compensate for the use of the 3rd valve tuning slide. Because when you use a valve, when you lengthen the length of tubing involved in the instrument, you need to subsequently lengthen the first and second tuning slides as well. There's a video that I've done called The Science of Tuning, which goes into that in a bit more detail if you're interested. Just notice that the end of this just falls off, so that needs to be resoldered, which is something that I can also do. Now you'll notice though that that cornet is a 3-valve and the euphonium is a 4-valve. And so the euphonium being a 4th valve has a couple well, it's got your dual first and second valve tuning slides. I think it's only got one third valve tuning slide, but it has a bunch of other things and so forth. It's got a colossal amount of extra tubing around the front, so it's quite heavy for what it is, and quite cool. So I'm going to be doing a little bit of work on that. I'm going to be cleaning it up, tidying it up, hopefully getting it functional. It's not the only interesting euphonium that I have, although the next one that I'll mention to you is en route. It's not something that I've got yet. It's going to be a couple of months away, but that's a 5-valve Besson euphonium where it has 3 valves up on the top and it's got 2 valves mounted horizontally. That one's apparently already in playing condition, so when I receive that sort of next month, hopefully, I should be able to just do a video on that straight away, and that will be quite cool. Right. Oh, there's a couple of questions about the pipe organ. Well, I've been doing a lot of work on the pipe organ. In fact, one of the reasons why there has been no content from me over the last sort of month or so, last couple of months actually, is because of the state that my music room has been in. I've had to do some building and some construction work in order to build a mezzanine that some of the pipes are going to go on. I've been reassembling this organ and so forth. This room has been in a deplorable state for quite a long time. It's getting a little bit better because the organ project is progressing. I will be doing a video on the organ project very soon, but there was a short that I was done recently which will hopefully demonstrate that some of the organ is actually playable. If I move this webcam around, I'll be able to show you the back of the console, which is there. One of the things that I've had to do is a whole bunch of new wiring for that because it's an old console. I've installed new circuit boards in it. I haven't finished tidying up the wiring. It's still a little bit messy. It's still a very bit messy. And then if I turn the camera or the webcam the other way, all you're going to see is just some pipes. There are about 650 pipes that are set up. Now that camera's in the sun, so let's move that around a little bit. Yeah, there's about 650 pipes or so that are assembled, installed, and partially tuned. Tuning is a big problem because the room that I've got here has just wall insulation. It has a ceiling that is at 45-degree angles like that. There is no insulation on the ceiling, and it's got a bunch of skylights in it. So the fluctuations of temperature in this room is quite dramatic. And so if I tune the organ in the morning and then tune the organ in the afternoon, if I reference that to, A equals 440, then in the morning I'm tuning to A equals 434. And then in the evening I might be referencing to A equals 440 or A equals 439 or something like that. The drift as the pipes change with the temperature is quite dramatic. So that's probably the biggest problem with this organ, is just the fluctuations in tuning. Different pipe constructions drift differently. So for instance, the reeds and the flue pipes, they drift in and out of tune differently. The wood pipes drift out of tune differently to the metal pipes, and the different types of metals drift in and out of tune together differently as well. So trying to tune this instrument is, it's never going to be perfect. But I will be doing a video on that very shortly because it's actually quite cool. I enjoy playing it. Yeah. Right, let's see if I've missed any questions. Have I ever had any contact with sarrusophones? No, I don't, but I'd love to. Sarrusophones are one of the sort of strange things. They're low brass instruments, which means that it's right in my wheelhouse, and I'd love to play one. They meet all of my criteria for being on my wall of many things, except they're probably a little bit too big. But if anyone wants to loan me a sarrusophone, I would love to play it. Chimbasso is an instrument that I have now played. A friend of mine had a chimbasso on loan, and I got an opportunity to play it, and boy was it fun. It was just addicting to blat out very low notes very loudly. Very addicting. And one day I may own a chimbasso myself. I don't know. It's one of those things. It was really enjoyable to play, but my motivation to actually go and spend my own money on one might have actually diminished as a result of playing that. That's another thing. So I guess it's 2023. It's the start of a new year. 2022 for me was a rough year. It was a big year. Those people who have watched my channel will know that my son was born in May. That was pretty exciting. He's doing very well. He's growing pretty fast. He's 8 months old today, and he is already the same weight that my daughter was when she was 2. In fact, my daughter's now going to be 6 in March, and he is over half her weight. He's a big boy, and he's probably going to continue being a big boy. So he's sleeping well. He's a delight. He's a fantastic little kid. But of course, being a parent of a young child is very difficult. So that contributed to 2022 being quite difficult. One of the things I haven't talked about publicly is I had a bit of a fiasco with my roof. Had a roofing contractor come in and do some work, and they did a very poor job. And in fact, I had to take them to the small claims court here in New Zealand to try and get my money back from them. The adjudicator of that court called them negligent, and we won that case easily. They had a judgment made against them, which they didn't pay within the time frame, so I had to chase that up, and they eventually paid. So that's now done, but that was 8 months or so of huge amounts of stress. A roof's kind of a fundamental thing when you have a house, and having a roof that leaks, that's causing water damage, you've got holes in your ceiling, all sorts of stuff, and then you hire a so-called expert to come and fix that, and they just make it worse. That's all stressful. Navigating, the roofing company, they were the first people outside of my wife and I that knew that we had a newborn coming so that they could schedule it. They had 6 months warning, and they said they had a lead time of about 3 or 4 months. It was about 2 or 3 months, and so the whole thing was supposed to be done well before Ruben got here. He was 2 weeks old before they started work, despite the fact they had 6 months notice. So newborn, people making as much noise on your roof as possible, then bodging that job, being negligent in the extreme, having to take them to small claims court to try and get some money back out of them. That was actually a very easy experience because the work they did was indefensible. The adjudicator of that court eviscerated them, and it was, I almost felt bad for them, but it only took one glance at the state of my ceilings to stop feeling bad for them all of a sudden. And then they didn't pay. They had a month or so that they had to make payment. They didn't pay. I had to chase them up and all the rest of it. That was incredibly stressful for me. Another thing that I had going on in my life was my work. So I work professionally in telecommunications, and was suffering a bit of burnout at the end of last year. Like quite a lot of burnout. I don't think I've ever been so just physically drained and exhausted from my work in a long time. So I ended 2022 in a pretty poor mental state, if I'm being honest. Now that isn't the reason why I left that job. I was just given an opportunity that I couldn't say no to. So I start tomorrow actually as my first day in a new job. So I'll need to shine my shoes and get my juice box out and get my lunch box ready and all the rest of it so I can go off to a new job and hopefully do okay. Yeah, hiring my replacement was an odd experience. Training my replacement was an odd experience. But it's been it's been a good 3 years at that company. I will be very sad to it's sad to know that I'm not I have no plans to go back. I learnt a lot, but I was just burnt out by life in 2022. It's the hardest year that I've had for quite a long time. So 2023 is hopefully going to be a new start. Hopefully going to be a new start for me. Now we're going to get the camera that I'm using is going to get progressively worse and worse in terms of video quality because we've got the sun coming in and that's going to overexpose that, and I can't do anything about it because it's a webcam. Other than seeing if I can put this, can I rest that on top of the, if that might work. Yeah, that might work unless it falls off. Anyway, so some more questions. Trent, did you used to be in a marching band? If so, what instrument did you play? I have marched, but the definition of marching that we use here in New Zealand is very, very different to the sort of DCI institute that exists in the UK. Marching that we do in New Zealand is usually confined to military style marching down a street in rigid formation in like a parade, which I've done a few times in terms of like Christmas parades. I've marched in a Christmas parade a couple of times, but mostly it's on what we call Anzac Day, which is the 25th of April, which is our sort of remembrance day here in New Zealand. And I've marched down the street a few times. I've never done the sort of DCI marching on a paddock, doing intricate formations and that sort of thing. The instruments that I've played have been almost exclusively trombone, mostly bass trombone. This front left-hand corner is usually where I've marched playing bass trombone. I don't do it anymore. Having had 6 operations on my back, I don't enjoy standing to play. I don't enjoy holding an instrument up vertically, horizontally rather, to play. It's all very rough on my back, so I don't do that anymore. Now, in fact, that's another thing that happened in 2022. I had my 6th spinal operation. I had my tailbone removed. So that was not fun. It was a big year. Right, what was the first brass instruments I learned? I started learning the cornet when I was 4. My granddad sort of taught me on and off. He taught me how to play a little bit. I sort of started learning probably more serious as I was sort of 5 or 6. And then I started learning trombone when I was 7. I taught myself for a while. Somebody just showed me the positions and then I just went at it. Had a couple of tutors over the years, but predominantly, cornet was the first instrument that I learned. Trombone from the age of 7. That was about it. I joined my first band, I think, at the age of 7 or maybe 8. Pretty young, anyway. So I've been doing brass, and I'm now 33. Gosh, so I've been playing brass instruments for, in a band context for over 25 years. Yes, I have no coccyx. I have no tailbone that was removed. A sloth named Fish has just said, can I play us a little tune on your super piccolo trumpet, The Excellence? No, I can't. I can't for a number of reasons. Number one is that I could never really play it. I'm not a high brass specialist. I am a low brass player. But also number two is that after I did the video on this, I tried to make the instrument a little bit worse. I tried to make it a little bit better. And then just sort of gave up because it was kind of futile. So the instrument right now, all of the valves are almost permanently pushed down. The instrument came from a donor Indian piccolo trumpet. It was a poor instrument to begin with. In fact, I use the word instrument generously because it's sort of hard to define it as such. But it doesn't have a second valve tuning slide. The third valve tuning slide is also not the right length, so that would need to be modified. Doesn't have anything for the second valve and so forth, so it would need a little bit of work. It was never a serious instrument anyway, so Yeah, it's an octave higher than a piccolo trumpet. It's a ridiculous concept. There are quite a few people. There's a soprano cornet Facebook group, and there are a few people that wanted me to send this to them to get them to have a play on it. Obviously that didn't happen because it's not really playable, but as a novelty instrument, it was worth a laugh. So that's my super piccolo trumpet, 2 octaves above a normal trumpet. Just a pointless instrument. I've played a couple of John Packer instruments. The John Packer Sterling euphonium was quite good. In fact, I did a whole video. In fact, I think I did a live stream as I put the instrument through its paces. I was very close to buying that instrument. It just wasn't better than what I had, which is my Boozy and Hawkes round stamp Sovereign euphonium, which remains to my day to be my main euphonium. So that's it was a good instrument. If I didn't have my euphonium, I probably would have begged permission from my wife to buy it. So that was pretty good. John Packer is an example of a company that has sort of designed some of their own instruments, but initially they did the sort of the Wessex thing, the thing you see with Schiller and Mac Brass and a number of those other things, where they just get the catalogue of Chinese-made instruments and say, yep, we'll want one of them, one of them, one of them, put their name on it, and that's pretty much all they do. They might do some quality checking and add some accessories and things, but a lot of those sort of companies made a start by just reselling generic instruments, and a lot of the John Packer stuff that I've seen fits that mold. That being said, some of their more recent ones with their collaborations with Smith Watkins, I think they did a collaboration with, in Sterling in the UK. Some of those ones are a little bit better. I've played a John Packer collaboration with Smith Watkins cornet a few times, and I had to work on them a little bit because the valves were poor. The instrument was alright, it's just the valves were poor on them. They needed to be lapped in. Lapped them in, and it worked beautifully for about 6 months, and then the valves just were poor again. So not sure what the state with that is. Yeah, it just needed some work. So that was something that I had to deal with a little bit. So I don't think I'd ever buy one myself, but from what I hear, they seem to be a little bit better. Do I still have the horrible tenor sousaphone? No, I don't. I sold that years ago. In fact, I didn't actually end up having it for a long time. I sold that to a person that cared more about its appearance than its musical value. And that was probably the right owner for that style of instrument, somebody who cares about its appearance more than its musical value. So I don't have that anymore. Brass Alphorn. Oh, I'd love an Alphorn. You don't get them in this part of the world, and they're exorbitantly expensive, and then all exorbitantly expensive to ship. So I don't have an Alpine horn. I would love one though. One thing, somebody's mentioned the Superbone. I don't have experience with the Mendini Superbone. All Superbones that I have played, which include the Holton original one, which I actually have in my storage here, a bit of a compromise, and a bit of an oddity. So I haven't got any experience with one. I wouldn't recommend the Superbone as a general concept. I'd love to play the Chargel Superbone, but one of the problems that I've got with the Superbone is that to make room for the valve block, the lead pipe, the mouthpiece receiver rather, is a lot longer than what you're used to. So normally on a trombone, first position's in fairly close. On the Superbone that I've played, first position, in fact all of the positions are about that much further out than what you're used to. So your muscle memory becomes a bit pointless because your hand just doesn't go to the right place. I've played trombone enough that I know third position, right there. I know that's where third position is because that's just where my arm goes. And you can measure that, and I'd put money on that is exactly where third position is on any trombone that I want to play. You give me a superbone though, that's a very sharp third position. It might even be a second and a half position. It's just wrong because the way that the superbone is assembled, they've needed to make more distance between the mouthpiece and the start of the hand slide. So everything is moved out beyond a little bit further. As a consequence of that, they usually only have 6 positions instead of 7. It's just a whole bunch of compromises, and so I wouldn't recommend a superbone for that. One of the other things that Holton did make in the 70s or whenever was a hybrid trumpet, slide trumpet type arrangement. It's like a superbone, but it's an octave higher, and they called it the Firebird. This was a trumpet, but it was reconfigured so that it has a slide that had about 4 positions in it. So you had the ability to play it as a trumpet, but you had this tuning slide that you can move like a little bit of a hand slide, and so you could get a few little things through that. I've got one of them. A person from I think Prague. It was either the Czech Republic or Czechia as it's called, or whatever, however that's pronounced, or Poland, or somewhere in that part of the world, somewhere in Europe, sent me a link to an auction site where they were selling a Firebird, and I forget how much I paid for it, quite a lot for it, and it's been sent over to me, and I have it. I'm going to clean it up and get to the point where it can be played and then do a video on it, but that's something that I'm quite excited about. And the last thing, I can't show, it's in my garage at the moment. It's not particularly presentable, and it's going to take me a couple of minutes to get it, just because of the state of my house. So I can't show it now, but there will be a video on that in the future, so make sure you're subscribed and all of that sort of stuff. One thing that I do have that I might get, because it is just over there, is the bass trombone conversion project. Now, 3 years ago, I started a project to convert my bass trombone. It was a Bach 50B3, which is the model that has a rotary valves. And in fact, I have the valve section for it up here. These are the old. This is the old trigger mechanism for it. In fact, this still works beautifully. The rotors still. The rotors still rotate smoothly. This was the valve section for that Bach 50B3. I took this off, obviously, as it's disassembled, and I had it converted to Thayer valves. Now I started that project 3 years ago, and I quickly got to the point where it was evident that it was beyond me. If I wanted to do it properly, I would need more tools than I would have. I would need more talent than what I have, and I would need more experience than what I have. So I shipped that away to a person in Auckland who ultimately arranged for that for the rest of that project to be done. And I have the instrument. Do you want me to get it? Do you want me to get it? Should I get it out? Yeah, I'll go get it. I'll go get it. It's one of the few instruments that I have that it actually is in a case. I had to modify this case to actually fit it because the molding that was in here wouldn't fit it anymore. But here we go. This is the finished result, and we have a bass trombone with Thayer valves. It's you wouldn't think that this is the end of a 3-year journey, but it is, and it works beautifully. I've played this a few times in context, in an actual band situation, and it is a lovely instrument. It needs a little bit of work. The bell is a bit scratched up. But the biggest problem with this instrument is that the slide. Now, this instrument used to belong to a now deceased trombonist, and I have no idea what they did with it because it's not a hugely old instrument. I think it was from the 90s or something like that. So it's not a hugely old instrument. But for whatever reason, the slide is riddled with red rot. I don't know if this is going to show very clearly in this webcam that I'm using, but the whole circumference of the bottom of the slide, both tubes, just riddled with red rot. The lead pipe, I'm not sure if it's supposed to be removable, but it is removable. The lead pipe is also is split in a couple of places. In fact, there's this big crack that runs down there. I just glare from the sun coming in. You're probably not going to be able to see that, but the lead pipe's absolutely shot on it. So this needs a new slide. I can't afford to buy a new slide, so I'm just sort of using it as it is. Now, so if you know of anyone who has a compatible slide for a Bach 50 or anything that fits, then please let me know, because I do need to get a new slide. This whole outer barrel along the whole length of this is just riddled and pockmarked with red rot. This isn't really a usable hand slide. It's the most disgusting thing that I've ever seen or put close to my mouth. And it uses lubricant like it's going out of fashion. I have to re-lube the slide regularly, which isn't surprising given the state that it's in, but the whole thing needs a new slide. If I played bass trombone regularly as opposed to a couple of times a year, I would replace it, the slide, or at least the outer barrels if the rest of it can be salvaged. I looked into the carbon fibre outer slides to see if that was an option, and then discovered the lead pipe was shot. So yeah, it needs a new slide. I don't have money for a new slide, so that is what it is. So a question that somebody asked is, why convert it in the first place? Well, rotary valves are a high resistance, particularly closed wrap rotary valves. When you have an airflow that's going, through an instrument with quite loose turns, and then you have a very sudden 90-degree bend there, a reasonable 90-degree bend there, a relatively tight 180-degree bend there, 90, 90, 90, and then a very tight 90-degree bend here, and then potentially going through another valve, it adds a lot of resistance, adds a lot of back pressure. That means that as a player you have to prepare and you have to manage that, but it also changes the tone, changes the act of playing, and so forth. So it's a lot of players don't like that, and I am one of those people that don't like that particular feeling of playing it. It's one of those things that you can get used to and you can make do, but I had the opportunity to convert it to Thayer's relatively inexpensively, and I've wanted to do that. So that's why I went through the effort of converting it. When I started, I naively thought it might be something I could do myself, given that I had been sent most of the bits. Turns out that the braces that I was sent weren't compatible with the bell section and things on this, so I had to order a set of new braces and so forth, and some of the tubing needed to be modified and so forth. So it actually ended up being a bit bigger of a job than I thought it was going to be, but I'm happy with the bell section and the valve section of the end result. It's a better instrument to play than my other bass trombone, which is a King 7B. My King 7B is it's a nice trombone. It's a bit older, and I enjoy playing it. I can get it to do pretty much anything that I want it to do, but I have to remember how to get the instrument to do that. The experience of playing the King 7B is that it'll do anything I want to. I just have to know individually how to get the result that I want. I have to remember that if I'm playing going between a non-triggered note to a triggered note and moving the slide in, it's going to behave differently. I have to articulate in a particular way, because there will be moving the slide in means that there's air that was occupying the end of the slide that needs to go out somewhere, and if you're moving the trigger, that blocks the passage of air to equalize the internal volume, and that means that you have to articulate in a different way towards when you're not going between a trigger. And there's all sorts of things that you have to remember about the personality of the instrument to get it to play the way that you want. With Thayer valves, there is a lot more consistency, a lot more standardization in the instrument, that means you just don't have to worry about that sort of stuff. It's a much more consistent playing field. There is still stuff that you have to learn and remember and so forth, but there are so fewer exceptions that it just makes it a more enjoyable instrument. Right, if you keep asking for my lowest instrument, maybe Trent will carry the organ into his room. The organ is in my recording room. It is right here. The lowest instrument, I mean, it's probably that tuba that I've got sitting right here that I showed earlier in the video. That's probably the lowest. I no longer have my own B-flat tuba, which was my lowest instrument. Can play notes on that lower than what the pipe organ can play. But the lowest pipe on my pipe organ is nearly 5 meters long, and it's sitting over there. I don't know if the cable of the webcam is going to be long enough to enable me to show it, but it is. Oh, you can just see it. Where's my finger going to be? There. I can't point. But that pipe up in that corner that goes down to the ground, that is the biggest pipe. That is low C of a 16-foot trombone. And now I have to put this back on. That pipe plays one note, and that note is low C. And that's all that pipe does. It barks. It makes a glorious sound. I call it my 16-foot foghorn. But that is a glorious sound. When I do a video on the organ, it'll have a section on that. If you want me to play the mini-belled instrument on my wall, go check out a video that I did, which I think is under the title of The World's Most Perfect Instrument or something like that. It's a shalmai, also known as a Martin's trumpet. It's a hideous thing. It's basically a whole bunch of horns. They've got little reeds in them and so forth. Yeah, it's an awful thing. Hence my sarcastic title, The World's Most Perfect Instrument. Sorry to go back to the bass trombone, but can you explain the red rot a little further? Right, yes I can. So, brass is an alloy of metals, and that alloy is made up of copper and zinc. And they get merged together in the metallurgy process. They produce brass. And brass is a material that we've used for thousands of years, so it's not an unknown material. However, it suffers from the process of dezincification, which is where the alloys. Now, this is all from memory, so forgive me if some of this is not precisely correct. Google it yourself. But where there's the two base metals, zinc and copper, can separate. And then the zinc will corrode. Copper is a little bit impervious to corrosion. It tends to tarnish. It goes green. But whereas when the oxide is formed, whereas zinc though it does also corrode. But when that process happens, when the zinc and the copper separate, we call that resulting thing red rot. And the red comes from the copper color. So the zinc comes out of the alloy and corrodes away, tarnishes, whatever, and we're left with patches of red rot. So we can see, I don't know how well this is going to show up. My entire monitor is just completely washed out because I've got the sun streaming in through the window above. But there are patches of red, coppery coloured sections all along the length of the slide here. And as a result of that, in fact, there's a little tiny split that I can see in the bottom here. As a result of that process, the metal weakens, you get holes forming in it, you get pits forming, cracks forming, all sorts of stuff that ultimately renders that piece of tubing unusable. You have to cut it away. You cannot reverse that process. If you have red rot in your instrument, you have to just break it. You have to just cut it out. You have to patch over it. You have to replace it and so forth. It is a cancer. Some people call it brass cancer. You have to get rid of it. And so this slide, the outer barrels of the slide need to be replaced. There is no way to make that better. It usually comes from the inside out, so that when you see it on the surface, it's sort of, yeah, it's too late to do anything about it, because it usually happens from the inside out. That being said, there are a number of things that people call red rot that are not actually red rot. Brass can go a whole bunch of different colors when it tarnishes. Raw brass can look quite nasty if it gets in contact with any other chemicals and so forth. So there are things that people think is red rot that isn't, but when it's accompanied by pitting, holes, cracks, all sorts of stuff, then you're pretty sure that's what you've got. So yeah, that's a thing that fortunately only affects the slide. I haven't seen any evidence of that on the bell section, but that is in essence what we've got there. It's not something that happens to all instruments. It's just sort of and it's not a time thing. Like this instrument was made in the 90s, I think, from memory. So it's relatively new as far as brass instruments are concerned. I have instruments that are over 100 years older that have absolutely no tarnish, no corrosion, pitting or anything like that on them. It's just the quality of the brass or whatever it is. I don't know exactly what it is that causes it or increases the likelihood of it happening. So I call it a cancer. It's not something that you know is going to happen. It just happens. But it can be quite destructive and so forth. Right. Yeah. Is there anything else anyone wants me to talk about? I've gone through, review of 2022. I've said Happy New Year. Have I said Happy New Year? Happy New Year, if I haven't said that. I can't remember. I've given you an update on some of the projects that I've got on, so hopefully you'll see some more videos in the future. One of my plans for later today is to potentially record some material that I'll edit over the coming few days. Don't hold me to that. We've got people coming over tonight and so forth, so who knows what will happen. But that may be something that that I do today. I'm going to be playing on my pipe organ a little bit later once Ruben has woken up from his nap, because I enjoy that. It is my happy place at the moment. Oh, somebody has said you've just gained a Patreon subscriber. Thank you very, very much. Patreon is one of the ways that I ensure that the costs that pertain to keeping my channel afloat actually get paid. The software that I subscribe to edit the videos, the software subscriptions and things like that, they're not free. And so having YouTube revenue, which is variable, like I haven't done anything in the last 2 months, it's dropped away precipitously, is not particularly reliable. So Patreon revenue is immensely useful for helping me to keep the bills paid as they pertain to this channel. So I very much appreciate anyone who chooses to support the channel on Patreon. That's that's fantastic. Really appreciate it. How did you come out? It's so hard to read my monitor when this was a dumb time of day to do a live stream. How did you come out with your sign in the back? Are you referring to this one here? If so, this was a dear friend of mine did a cross stitch for me. So that was a cross stitch that was done years ago and has been in my channel ever since. So that's pretty cool. Right, I'm going to leave it there because my voice is getting tired and I'm getting tired of hearing my own voice. So thank you very much for watching. And have a happy and prosperous 2023.